Happy International Women's Day alongside Tessa Bonhomme and Jennifer Hedger. I'm Lindsay Hamilton, and what a treat to celebrate International Women's Day, doing something we all love. Talking about sports, you know it. And when you think of the last year, my goodness, what a year it's been for women in sports. I mean, we saw record viewership, record attendance numbers. People really showed up.
Yeah. And new leagues.
That too.
New leagues, new stars. Tess, so if we look, let's say not just a calendar year, but maybe in the last 365 days, biggest standout moment for you in women's sports?
Yeah, obviously.
If you don't say the P, then we don't know each other.
Obviously, it's the PWHL and the fact that the league launched successfully, and there's a great space for these ladies to showcase their talent. But it's not only that; it's just the way, the hockey community itself showed just how hungry they were for something like this. There was a massive appetite. We kept saying it because every 4 years at the Olympics, the women's final and women's hockey, those games were some of the most watched, the most viewed. So to have that every 4 years, it was just saying it's there. Like people do like to see this and they do want it. And so to finally have this league come to fruition, and you saw Minnesota set the attendance record. Ottawa had set it originally. Then Minnesota, and then Toronto took the cake at the game that we were at, the Battle on Bay Street. 19,285.
Nice.
Like, that's insane. And it was raucous in there. People weren't just sitting there hanging out. Like, they were into the game. They all knew the players. It took 2.5 periods to get a goal, Hedge. Remember when the goal was finally scored?
The place
popped off. But it wasn't even quiet that whole time.
Yeah.
It was chaotic, and it was fun. And I think that's what's great. And I think that, a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's going to fizzle out. And it hasn't.
No.
And it won't. Ottawa, every home game, they continue to break their own home attendance record. So it's not like there is this fizzle. It just continues to gain momentum, and you'll have to see it. And I'm excited for, Project 8 for the Women's Soccer League to launch. I think that's just only going to carry over, and all of these leagues are going to gain momentum.
Well, what I've loved about the PWHL is that they're selling out these arenas, and people are they're showing up. And you mentioned soccer. That would probably be my highlight. The Women's World Cup. It was career highlight to go to Australia as part of TSN's coverage. And it really showed we are in a new era of women's soccer and a new era of women's sports. It was the largest standalone event in women's sporting history. Viewership numbers far exceeded expectations. They had to change stadiums because there were so many people.
And the parity, right? The fact that it's not the same teams winning all the time anymore.
And it's far more competitive than it was before. And it just truly shows the strength internationally of the women's game and how much it's growing. And you love to see it because you kind of set the bar here, and women's sports just keeps on coming in and smashing it and setting an entirely new level.
Well, and I look no further than Caitlin Clark, right, in the United States, because Caitlin Clark has been this athlete that has come in and taken college sports by storm, becoming the all-time
male or female
highest scoring basketball player in college sports. But also now it's going to go to the WNBA, right? Because the WNBA is going to have their Michael Jordan moment where it's like, where's Caitlin Clark going? Probably to the Indiana Fever. They've already got a huge fan base that's selling out tickets because they want to see Caitlin Clark. She's got her sponsorship deals, and she's putting so many more eyeballs on the league. And
wicked.
When we talk about the fan bases too, I think there's this misnomer they're trying to steal NBA fans, or they're trying to steal NHL fans, or they're trying to steal Premier League fans. No, women's sports has a fan base, and the Venn diagram doesn't always capture who's watching the men's sports at the same time.
I think too the coolest thing. So you're talking about the viewership with these ladies on the soccer team, and we're talking about Caitlin Clark, and we're talking about the attendance and the interest in women's sports. When I grew up playing hockey, I'm so lucky I had a dad that sought after women in the game, because it was incredibly hard to even watch women's hockey. It was on maybe once a year when the World Championship final was happening, and even then it would be aired wherever it was being played at whatever time it was once, and that was it. And back then there was VHS, so you had to hit the record button. You couldn't just set a PVR, so if you missed it, you missed it. And it took a while for me to find Geraldine Heaney to look up to. And my dad really had to work hard. And it was only recently, every time I go to an event and stuff, I always ask little girl hockey players who their favorite player is, and they often name, the usual, Connor McDavid.
Oh, a man.
They always name the male players. And it's just recently, in the past little bit, that they're starting to name the female player first. And so that's when I know, okay, these ladies have somebody to look up to and to aspire to without any effort. because it's there and they're present. And I think that that's only going to continue to build momentum and to help continue grow their viewership.
Right.
And have another Caitlin Clark come up the ranks in 5 to 7 years. So
and be able to buy her jersey, right? Like
That's
the
it.
thing. Get the
Readily
Spooner
available.
jersey. Get the Caitlin Clark jersey. It's an Olympic year this year, Paris Olympics. They're really blowing their horn about it being the first Olympics that has true gender parity, and that the same amount of athletes, male and female athletes. I love where they're going with that, because in 1900, when the women competed in their first Olympic Games, it was 2% of the athletes were women. So we've come a long way with it being 50%. I do sort of sit back a little bit, though, when the Olympics are blowing their horn on this, because there's a lot of countries that compete in the Olympic Games where women aren't even allowed to drive cars. I shouldn't say a lot of countries, but there are. I mean, women's rights struggle around the world. So it is nice that we are looking at gender parity at the Olympic Games. I'd also love to see some more gender parity, though, when it comes to coaching and commentators and analysts and behind the scenes stuff. But where do you stand, though, on growth? Like, we have growth coming. What's the next step for women's sports?
I feel like it's our industry. It's broadcasting. Dump the same amount of dollars in it. Give these ladies those primetime slots. I think that just helps enhance viewership. And Sarah Nurse was on Spit and Chicklets on the podcast, and she had mentioned, it's their first year in the league, so no one was really sure what was going to happen with the broadcast rights, and the league decided to take it on themselves and air it and make it available to everybody across the world, everywhere on YouTube. So there was no limitations. It was just to garner as much information and eyeballs as they could. And I think now it's our turn, to really take it and blow it up and make it the Super Bowl and, make it an everyday
It's investment. It's dollars. It's
professional
investment.
looking,
Yeah. Investing.
broadcast.
Yeah.
For me personally, when I think of the future of women's sports, I could talk about consumership, viewership, equality in pay. I want to get to a point where the average sports viewer can easily name 5 female athletes in every major sport.
Yeah.
Right.
Without pausing, without hesitation. Because that would prove to me we are at a place where it's so commonplace. It's so part of the conversation already. We're seeing these women as much as we're seeing men, and we're watching these sports. Because right now, people don't know as many female athletes. And it is starting to change. Tess, you made a great point. You're seeing more and more young girls mention a Christine Sinclair or Natalie Spooner as their icon. But we still have such a long way to go. And when that's the norm, that to me is when I'm going to see change.
Yeah, it's a coverage thing, right?
Yeah.
It's and it has to do with investment, has to do with having women not only like sitting in the chairs that we sit in, but sitting in the chairs that make those high level decisions, right? Of like where the dollars are going to go, how we're going to cover the sport. And one thing I will say, and Tess, you and I talk about this a lot, enough with the women athletes being moms. We got it.
Yeah,
we know they're moms.
We know we are.
Let's talk about the athletes being athletes.
Oh, man. All right. Well, this was a fun conversation. Thanks, guys. Obviously, a record year. It has been so far. I look forward to seeing women's sports continue to grow and thrive and just keep our foot on that gas pedal, right? Because it's onwards and upwards.
Cheers.